Welcome to this week's episode of the Best Damn Coach Show. And we're talking about podcasts, which feels really cool on a podcast to talk about the importance of podcasting. And so I'm going to get into the backstory, but I first just want to welcome you. So, welcome to the show to talk about podcasting is Adam Schaeuble. So, welcome.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here on the Best Damn Coach podcast.
Well, I'm excited to have you. And we came together. Really, I don't really remember how we met, but I know our common. I had the opportunity to jump onto your show, which I'm honored that I had that chance. And also, we talk all things basketball because that is like our mutual love. So,
Yes.
basketball, the ballers unite.
Yeah. I mean, game recognize game. Hoopers recognize hoopers. And when I saw you doing that B-roll on the IG, I'm like, oh, this is great. And another hooper. Like, there's so few basketball players in the podcasting space that I've met. So I had to take advantage.
That's funny. I really don't know. I mean, I've coached in some other communities, and there's often a signature story that I tell about basketball about an old when I broke my hand and I had to shoot with my left hand, and then it always fires up people. But I never really meet a lot of hoopers in this world. So I'm glad that we can talk all things horribleness of the NBA All-Star Game and the ridiculous score that existed.
Yeah. And I'm from Indiana too. So I had opinions. I'm like, man, Indy can't be doing this to me. So yeah.
Totally. Well, okay, let's dive into why people are actually listening, which is not basketball, but we're going to talk about today podcasting growth, how to start a podcast, all things podcasting. But I'd love for you to share first, how did you end up here becoming an expert to support other coaches, service providers to make money essentially through podcasting?
Yeah. So I launched my first show in 2015, way back in the way back days of podcasting when like microphones were made out of wood and stuff like that. Um, I launched a health show. I had a gym, very similar background to Amanda in the fitness space for you all that know her backstory. And I had a very successful boot camp program. I was working with athletes, working with people with weight loss. So I started a weight loss based show called the Million Pound Mission. And it took me about 3 years to figure out how to make money from that. It was a long, twisted, windy road, very frustrating. I probably should have quit about 100 times, but I didn't, because I believed in this vision of online business and being able to coach and sell courses and memberships. Because I saw other people doing it, and I was like, they aren't that different than me. I just got to figure this out. So eventually I did. And a neat thing happened where I created memberships. I had courses, boot camps. I was doing some consulting, and other people in the fitness space started coming to me going, hey, I saw you have this membership. It seems like it's kind of ripping a little bit. Could you teach me how to build that for my company? And I'm like, yes, I can. And I quickly figured out that when you are teaching people, when they're paying you for how to make money, business, consulting, coaching, you can charge a lot more than health and wellness. Unfortunately, like, I'm over there saving people's lives at $30 a month, and I can charge unlimited amounts to teach people how to make money. So I eventually sold my entire fitness brand, my brick and mortar business, my show, people don't realize you can sell a podcast. Like the whole brand, I sold it all and went full into podcasting business school, where I just basically focus on how can people create a podcast and put that at the center of an ecosystem where they're building an online business that's pulling in 6 figures plus. I also love to teach people how to work at least one less day per week. That's one of my brand mission points that I really like to emphasize. But from 2015 to 2019 is when I went full into podcasting business school. Sold my gym right before the pandemic started. That was huge.
Oh, you're a lucky duck. Lucky duck there.
Yes, that was awesome. So yeah, and I've been full time, haven't looked back ever since, and it's really been a dream come true from somebody that I take a lot of pride in, being a dad, being a husband, being around, being like, I drop off, I pick up, I make meals, we do workouts, I coach the teams, but being an online business person has allowed me to do that, and I wouldn't be able to do that without my show.
Yeah, I love that so much. And I love that you pointed something out that I think this is a larger lesson than what we're about to talk about with podcasting, is bringing on people onto your podcast that also align with your values, and the fact that you like want to be present with your kiddos and do all of those things. There's a lot of synergy that at least I've learned to be transform, really transparent about the process of having, hundreds of guests over the years on my show. I've learned over time how to carefully curate the guests that are brought on, not just for the growth of the podcast, but also the values of the podcast. Because if you are going to grow based on the guests that comes on, because essentially it's exposure to new audience, for me, I want it to be the right people, right? Which is one of the reasons I'll go on your podcast absolutely, because there's synergy and values. And I think
Yeah.
that's an important piece that we overlook sometimes. I would say frequently in business, is that values and prioritization piece too.
Yeah. If you are collaborating with another brand in any other way, even like with sponsorships and things like that, like how many companies are out there sponsoring podcasts? And what if they go and do something that makes a whole bunch of people mad, and all of a sudden you're running these ads on your show and now you're affiliated with that? You got to be really careful. And yeah, I think what you're doing, the Best Damn Coach, and like I've been a fan of your brand for quite a while now, and I'm a weekly listener.
Thank you.
I'm a fan. I'm a fanimal of the Best
Thank
Damn
you.
Coach. So I love what you're doing with your brand. You can see the content curation and the effort you're putting behind that. And I think that's why it's such a great show.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Let's go into some meat and potatoes then, because obviously we're all coaches here, service providers, mentorship, like whatever you relate to as far as your title. Why is a podcast an awesome next step to be kind of that tree trunk of your coaching brand? Why would a coach put in all this effort, as you said, to build this amazing content from your perspective?
Yes. All right, Amanda, you got me fired up now. I'm doing the shoulder roll.
Starting to
Okay.
relax into it
Yeah.
now.
So I love this question. I love this topic because I think I look at this in a unique way that not enough online coaches, consultants, people building online business ecosystems, they don't look at it this way. So there's a unique superpower of a podcast that is different from social media, that is different from YouTube, that is different than email marketing. And that is the fact that we can insert our content into the life routines of our ideal clients slash listeners, because audio, and
Yes.
people consume podcasts while they're mowing their yard, while they're working out, while they're driving their kid to school. And this is, the one thing that could ruin this superpower is if you don't put out weekly content. Because what if I'm listening to Best Damn Coach and I listen to Amanda when I do my morning treadmill sessions? That's when I listen to Best Damn Coach. If you decide to take a break and not put out an episode for 2-3 weeks, I'm still doing my treadmill sessions. I'm going to listen to somebody else. And now they're in my routine. You may not get that real estate back. So that's why I'm such a huge fan of find a way to get weekly content, whether if you're doing interviews, break it up into 2 parts or do some micro solo episodes, whatever you've got to do. But that superpower is legit. Nobody consumes YouTube content. They're not like, it's Wednesday at 6 a.m. Got to watch this YouTube video. Like, they don't do that. But if it's Wednesday, 6 a.m. treadmill time, we can be in that life routine. And that's huge, huge, huge. Where if you're trying to attract your ideal customers into your podcast listening audience, like getting them obsessed with your show and on a weekly basis, consuming that content, viewing you as an expert week in, week out, that's a huge advantage.
Yeah, I love that. Inserting into the daily routines that exist. And obviously, it's just a low barrier of entry to consume, because we don't have to be stagnant sitting in front of a computer. We can be playing with our kids. We can be doing the laundry, right? Like all those things that you said that are so valuable. And one thing that I just want to add as well, why podcasting for me is also for somebody that's like, why should I? One of the main reasons I started a podcast was to get over myself, like in a nice way of just like show up and get rid of the imposter syndrome and give myself my own platform to speak on. Because I just shared this story inside of the BDC community. I was sitting at a conference next to this gentleman and we were chit chatting, and we had been there probably a few hours, and then they announced the next speaker on the stage, and it was him, right? And I didn't know him from Adam. And in that announcement and him walking to the stage, one giant thing changed. He became an expert on a stage. And I think podcasting provides that same platform is you get to create your own stage to position your expertise. If you have 5 listeners or 5 million listeners, and I don't think that I think we overlook the value of that sometimes.
Yeah. And when you talk about podcasting and you talk about expert positioning like that, that's another one of the superpowers where, like, I've got this rule. I name my processes and my, my frameworks.
My inner framework
Yes.
soul is so happy you said that.
So I name everything because it's easier for people to remember, So I've
That's the
got
point.
it's called Adam's 2/3 content rule for expert positioning. So I'm coaching podcasters that are service providers. I go, one of the really common themes is people only do interviews. And I'm like, if you only do interviews, why would anybody buy something from you? Because you're not seen as the expert, you're seen as the person that interviews experts.
Totally.
And so I always say, like, 2/3 of your content on your show, you follow this. Like, you didn't even know the rule and you're already doing it. That's how good you are. So, solo episodes, coaching or case study based episodes like that. I do a podcast audit episode every single Friday. I've done it for 2 years straight, where I invite one of my listeners onto my show and I coach them for 30 minutes for free. And they can throw whatever they want at me and I just show off what I do. And those are my most downloaded episodes. I could have Pat Flynn and John Lee Dumas on my show at the same time, plus Amy Porterfield. Won't do as many downloads as my podcast audits because that is somebody that's plucked out of my audience asking the questions that all my audience members have, and they never miss them. And I've got hundreds of those out of my 400 and whatever episodes. So people binge listen to my show. It's just me coaching expert solo episodes. When I do have a guest on, like Amanda, people take it seriously. They're like, oh, wow, like he's having a guest on. Like, this is a big deal. Like I have a guest on about once every 8 to 10 weeks. So that expert positioning factor is really powerful with the podcast. You add that to the binge listening capability and the lifestyle routine insertion. Now we've got a recipe for client acquisition.
Yeah, it's so true. So let's dive into the beginning stages. So for my coaches listening that don't have a podcast but are considering, where is like low barrier of entry? Because of course we're probably listening to this show and other shows that have more of a production process. But I know I recorded. I don't know about you. My first episodes for years were in my closet on my Apple headphones, and I was recording into my iPhone before I had a mic, before I now have like a nice camera and I'm using the Riverside platform. So where is the starting point that you would guide people to that are in these, like, maybe considering to start a podcast?
Yeah, just low barrier equipment stuff. A lot of people get into it and they're like, I need the $500 microphone, the Yeti 3000.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
And I'm like, spend $97 on a mic and take the other 400 and learn how to be a podcaster. Get coaching, get mentorship. That's going to be a much better investment. We need to hit the fast forward button. And because 80% of podcasts don't make it past episode 10. All right.
Is that a legit statistic?
Legit.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Let me freak you out even more.
Yeah,
so
please.
there have been I get reports every 90 days. The last 90-day report I got, over 4 million podcasts have been launched, but less than 300,000 can check these two boxes. They have over 10 episodes and have released anything in the last 90 days.
What?
300,000.
Consistency,
Oops, something
baby.
just happened. Balloons are going up.
Hey, we're celebrating AI. But like consistency, that's what that says right there, is consistency will trump fancy anything any day when it comes
That's
to
how I won
content.
the game in the niche that I'm in. I've got the #1 show, most downloaded show about podcasting. And I've won that game because I show up twice a week, every freaking week. Like, you can't, it's you're gonna have to hit me with a bus to get me to not release my show. And I'm still gonna figure it out.
Me too. Yep.
So
when everybody else is quitting and everybody else feels like they don't want to, you and we still record.
We got that dog mentality. Like,
yes.
you're not gonna beat me. If all I have to do is show up, I'm gonna show up, and that's how I figured it out initially. But like, low barrier getting started with a podcast, I've got a $97 microphone. I've recorded 1,000 plus episodes total since 2015 on this $97 microphone. I recorded hundreds of episodes from my 2009 MacBook Air. I only upgraded like a year and a half ago. So like all the keyboard keys were wore off. My kids were like, Dad, how do you type on that thing? You can't even see the keys. And I'm like, I touch type. I took that class in high school, 60 words per minute or whatever it was. I've got a $35 sound wall behind my mic. I've got like a $50 ring light and good to go. And when a lot of people are nervous about the production and all that, I'm like, if you're doing a meditation based podcast or a storytelling podcast or something like that, yeah, there's got to be production value. If you're a coach, you bring energy and education, you are good. Energy, education, you say a few times, who cares? You don't have a pop filter.
I'm like is mine.
So I say the word outstanding a lot, and my audience makes fun of me. This one guy came on the show for a podcast thought. He goes, Adam, I'm going to take a drink of whatever's in my cup every time you say outstanding. I'm like, uh-oh. And so, yeah.
So funny.
They did a little inside joke for my pod pals out there. But yeah, I mean, cheap stuff. I have an ATR 2100. Look it up on Amazon. There's a little pop filter, $100. Like you can get going. Hosting is like $20 to $25 a month. Like you can get going. If you got a $300 budget, you're ready to rock. Let's go.
Yeah.
And
love it.
You can get up and get going.
Yeah. And I mean, my budget was even smaller than that because I didn't even do any of those things initially. It was about showing up and like truly just being messy with the things and the value that I wanted to deliver and having the time to just articulate my expertise and give myself a voice and a platform, the things I knew I needed to convey to my ideal client. I think that's often overlooked too, as far as the element of confidence that it's brought to be able to produce consistent content over time too.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, can I tell you the number one mistake that I see people making when they launch? Can we discuss that? Is that
I would love to, because there's one thing that I want to hit on too, and I wonder if ours are going to be the same thing.
Okay. For me, the number one way that podcasters basically put up a roadblock for their ideal listeners to find them is the name of their show.
Ooh, tell us more. What do you mean by that?
So the name, when you talk about, we all hear SEO, search engine optimization. There is a variation of that for your podcast, but it's different than web. All right. So whatever works on the web and Google, it's a little bit different. So you have to think about the Apple podcast or Spotify podcast search bar. What are your ideal listeners putting in that? They aren't putting questions in there. So I know most of my listeners find me. If you put podcasting tips on any podcast listener search bar, I'm the first show that shows up. All right. So how do we get that position? The name of the show has the most SEO power. And the first word in the name of the show has the most SEO power out of the whole thing. So you want to so the first word in the name of my show is podcasting. That really helps. Next word, business. All right.
Smart.
Huge search terms. So I've got 3 rules. If somebody's thinking about starting a show, I've got my naming formula, Adam's perfect podcast naming formula.
I love that everything's simple. Adam's perfect. Adam's. It's
I want you to remember my name. People listening to Best Damn Coach. So Adam's perfect podcast naming formula. 3 check boxes. Number 1, when I read the name, I want to know what it's about. Exactly. You're not there to explain it. So I can't call it the Awesome Adam podcast. What's that about? I don't know. So rule number 1, when I read it, I want to know exactly what it's about. Rule number 2, I want to know exactly who it's for. I want some identifying terms. Who is this for? What words do they use to describe themselves? And then checkbox number 3, I want at least 2 keywords that people are searching inside the search bar. And some people that already have shows are like, oh, I'm screwed. I'm going to have to do a rebrand.
I know. I'm all, oh gosh, I don't check all the boxes.
So here's the thing. Best Damn Coach podcast, we do a title extension. So Best Damn Coach podcast, conversations about or tips for keyword. So tips for online coaches, service providers, and entrepreneurs or whatever, Smart. Like getting those words in there. I've got one for my show, Podcasting Business School. It's just a ton of keywords. I don't even remember what it is. I never even mention it anywhere, but it's on the title line So it's like an SEO bomb.
I'm all, okay,
Everywhere.
task to go do after
Yes.
this.
You can, I literally, so here's a great case study. I did a consultation with somebody doing this, and we just added a title extension, and then I changed her art a little bit. I've got some strong opinions about podcast art as well that really help. She went from 80 downloads an episode to 108,000 downloads in a year. And those are the only two changes that we made. So this
I
is
love
powerful
it.
stuff.
Totally powerful. I love that. So there you go. Mic drop. You've already got tangible ROI right now for those of you that already have a podcast or are thinking about it. But I totally agree with you. It goes back to the beginning naive times in business for me too. It's like clever over clear. It was kind of where I always opted. Hence my Instagram profile, A Walk My Way. It's like so cool. Come take a walk my way, right? So great in the moment. And now I'm like, dang it, I should totally change it. Right. But I've learned that over time. So that's why we do this, right? So we can save our people the tough love we've had to figure out ourselves and help get them there faster for sure.
Yeah. Can I tell you something really embarrassing? The
Please.
the
We
original
like
name,
embarrassing.
the original name of Podcasting Business School was not Podcasting Business School. I did 101 episodes as Casting the Pod.
Okay, I mean, I kind of also have you because this is so funny. Remember, my previous brand was Feel Amazing Naked. So now, if we go back to that SEO strategy, we can only imagine the things over the years as Feel Amazing Naked has brought into my world through DMs,
Yeah.
through unsolicited emails, et cetera, et cetera. And that was never my intention. Total oversight, but I'll let your imaginations think about what might have happened because it probably all did. And needless to say, I'm glad that ship has sailed.
We'll have to compare war stories. I had a similar DM experience on Instagram where I was getting body part pictures that I didn't want to see, and it was the voice. Honestly, the voice brought it in. It wasn't my SEO. It was just like, I love your voice. Here's my transformation picture. Oops, not a transformation picture. It's something else.
Yes.
And
So funny. My voice is always commented on as well. So it's so funny we share all these commonalities. I would love to add one thing too around, and I'd love your opinion on this, but there's another roadblock that I see for new podcasters is they get really excited and they release an episode and then they don't realize or have a game plan to how to curate consistent content and map out a content strategy to keep them proactive. And so they fall into that ghosting kind of their
yeah,
listeners piece. So if you're also starting out, I don't know if you have a rule, but I would definitely have like 6 to 8 episodes in the bank to give yourself the runway to find a consistent rhythm and routine for podcasting. And then I know also my podcast recording seasons change. Like right now, because we have new equipment, I've moved into a different batching process where I wasn't really batching for a while, but I definitely would say create a runway for yourself.
yeah, that is beautiful advice. And when I consult on a launch, I like to create a launch sampler platter. It's like a little episode buffet. I like to launch with 4. So all of them are live all at once. And I'm like, I want some different flavors in there because what if I don't want to create a one strike and we're out scenario of like, ooh, don't like that topic. They're not going to research and find your show again where it's like, let me search that show I didn't like. And like, that's not going to happen. So when they search your keywords, your image pops up, they click on it. I want them to have a little sampler platter of different, maybe an interview, a solo episode. First episode, I want to know a little bit about your backstory and what to expect from the show. Maybe a case study or a client success story episode. Give them some different flavors, different topics, so that they may go, ooh, episode 3, that topic sounds cool. And then they're in and like, all right, Amanda's my girl. I'm listening to all these things. So that, and then when we launch, I'm like, not only we're going to launch with 4, I want you done with the first 6. So I want a 2-week buffer of we're doing weekly content. You get the first 6 done at launch, 4 are live, 2-week buffer. And then all you have to do is record 1 a week and you're always 2 weeks ahead. So that way, in case you get
Yeah,
sick, you
for sure.
travel, you decide to have a life for a week or something like that,
Yeah.
we got a buffer.
Yeah, I love that so much. Excellent. So now let's shift gears into the monetization piece because I think there is some myths that we probably both agree on around how do we make profit with a podcast. And I mean, I definitely have my philosophies, and I'm going to share. I would love to share just a little bit more
Yeah.
about our show compared to your show. But what are some myths or maybe just steps to grow if we are a podcaster or thinking about podcasting?
So, from a business perspective, a lot of people come in thinking, I'm gonna get that mattress company money. I'm gonna get that MeUndies money, some Athletic Greens money coming in, you know, and they're like, not one single underwear company has called about sponsorship. It's already I've released 3 episodes, Adam. Why am I not getting sponsors? And we get our feelings hurt. Or you start doing affiliate marketing. Like I remember my health podcast. I'm like, Four Sigmatic. And I'm doing all these ads. I'm using my big podcaster, robust voice. I'm like, Four Sigmatic, the best mushroom coffee you've ever had. Blah, blah, blah. And I made like 37 cents a month off Four Sigmatic. I mean, great company, but it's affiliate marketing. So
Sure.
I feel like as service providers, as coaches, consultants, whatever you label yourself as, I feel like the easiest way to earn income from a podcast is to attract your ideal potential clients and use it as what I call a community client bridge. So your ideal listeners become potential ideal clients. You show off expert positioning. You have calls to action like discovery calls and things like that. I invite my community to participate on my show a lot, and relationships are built. And then people are converting over into being clients for coaching, consulting, courses, memberships. That's the easiest way to start earning meaningful income, not 37-cent mushroom coffee money, but I'm talking about, 5K months or replacing your income and going full time. I feel like that is an opportunity that more podcasters that are service providers, like that should be opportunity number one. I turn away sponsorship because I make way more money controlling the narrative with, the advertising space of my show for my own programs, products, and services.
Yeah, totally. Same. We are pitched quite frequently, but again, it's that relationship building, and the vision I have for monetizing outside of service actually doesn't look anything like traditional sponsorships like you're saying, but we haven't even personally scratched that surface because like we were saying before we hit record, that's not my wheelhouse. It's going to take my energy away from what I do best, which is being with my clients and creating the content. So I feel like I need to bring somebody on specifically to run that element of the show. And then that's just a matter of making a decision. Like, is that something we even want to do? Right. And is it going to impact the trust factor that we build in the podcast? And that's why I love podcasting so much is my hope is that if you listen to me on the show and then you hung out with me on a Sunday afternoon, you'd be like, oh, Amanda's Amanda. Amanda is the girl, for the most
Yeah.
part that I hear on the show. And I think that this is one of the only ways that we can really get a feel for it. And as the market continues to grow in the coaching and service provider world, you and I and those that are starting podcasts or choosing to be consistent with them, I think we have a leg up because we can invite people into our world. They get a taste of what it's like to be with us, and we already have a platform to share offers and build community, and that trust factor is to me unlike anything else that exists out there.
Yeah, I agree 1000%. I'm living proof of that. Like people they listen to my show and they're like, Adam, how do you do all this stuff? And like I always talk about having a 3-day work week, and I'm like, I'm just pin my ears back and I only do the things that work. And like I focus only on that. So I'm not jacking around with sponsorships. That takes extra time.
Yes,
I
so
focus on one social media platform. I do 2 pieces of content per week. I do all the editing production myself. I get it out. I get it done. Like I just simplify before we multiply. That's one of my old coaches, Dan Sullivan. I worked with him for 7 years. I was in his program. I know you know who Dan is. He's the co-author of the 10X is easier than 2X.
yes,
Awesome book.
so good.
So like he's always like simplify before we multiply, Adam. And he always inspired me to just only do that low hanging fruit, the one thing. Another one of my favorite books, like what's the one thing, if you do this, it has the greatest amount of impact on everything else. So yeah, sponsorship was a no for me because I
Yeah,
can make a greater impact and better use of my time promoting my own programs, products, and services.
I agree totally. And on the flip side, you just mentioned you do all your editing and everything like that. I never even dabbled into that. As soon as I decided to podcast, I reached out to find someone to do that stuff for me because I knew that I didn't want to spend the time learning that skill set because it's so not my wheelhouse. And I share that just because we have two totally different pathways, but really under the same principle of simplify before you multiply. It essentially is like, I don't need to go do things like sponsorships that are going to take my energy away from my zone of genius. And so there are different ways to go through this process depending on, how much you want to invest money wise and how much of a team you already have or don't have. There's options.
Yeah. And just to put it out there, I usually do recommend for people to delegate their editing and production. But me having a show about podcasting, I kind of feel like ownership of like, I need to have an in-depth knowledge of knowing how to do this so I can handle those types of questions and things like
For
that. So
sure.
yeah.
For sure, hands down. So I just want to finish on the growth conversation. So let's just say somebody's listening, like, I've been podcasting, I'm not seeing the ROI, my show's not really growing. Maybe what's the number one reason you see podcasts not growing or
Okay.
stuck?
First thing you have to understand is what is quote unquote good. So I like to put two numbers out there, some more stats, like legit stats.
Seven.
So I talked to Rob from Libsyn. Libsyn's one of the oldest podcast hosting services. I love them. They've got a great show called The Feed. If you guys are
That's what
interested
we
in that,
used
yeah,
to.
it's an excellent, excellent show. So let's talk two benchmark stats that every podcaster needs to understand so we can quit beating ourselves up about our numbers. First one is 125 downloads per episode measured at the 30-day mark post release. So Amanda puts this episode out 30 days from today, we measure. So if it's at 125 or above, and we're consistently doing that number, we have a top 50% podcast. So we're better than 50% of all podcasts out there at 125 per episode. Very doable. Very doable. If we get to 1,000, you're a top 20% podcast. When you get into that like 5,000, top 1% podcast. So these aren't the Joe Rogan millions that we hear about. Like, oh, I'm not doing 3 million, I suck. Like 125, you're better than half of all podcasts that exist. This is doable.
Yeah.
So like that 1,000 download, that 1,000 true fan mark, those are great benchmarks to shoot for. So I like to put those out there because every time I say
So
it,
good.
people are like, oh, that's not that much.
Yeah.
Like I'm halfway there. I'm doing 75 or I'm doing 100 or whatever. So I like to put those out there. Now, if we're looking to grow, we got to look at two sides of the coin. There's organic discoverability, which I covered a little bit earlier with the SEO and the naming. All that stuff is really important. Keywords are important. And then we look at effort-based marketing. So with effort-based marketing, there are things like, what are you doing on social to promote your episodes? What are we doing as far as guesting on other people's podcasts? This is a great opportunity for me. I invited Amanda onto my show. She scooped up some audience there. I get the honor to be here. I'm hopefully scoop up a couple of y'all to come over and hang out in podcasting business school world. And that's great. But then there's also paid marketing opportunities. I'm going to give you a pro tip that I wish that somebody had told me in 2015. All right. There are smaller podcast player apps. There's Apple and Spotify. Those are the big dogs, like huge, over 50% of the market share. But there are smaller ones with millions of downloads. And these smaller apps let you run banner ads on their platform. And these are so easy. My favorite one is called Overcast FM. So if you go to overcast.fm/ads, I have zero affiliation with this company. You can place a banner ad and it takes 5 seconds. Like I was struggling with Facebook ads and trying to like this changes every freaking day. And I'm just giving Mark Zuckerberg money. Here you go. Buy another goat, name it after me. I don't care. Like really struggling. So I started doing podcast player app banner ads. They take your art, you get a line and a half of text. And then I can say, I want to run this ad for 30 days in the business podcast category. So people are listening to Best Damn Coach and my banner ad pops up. Podcasting Business School, tips for podcast launch, growth, and monetization. They track how many people see it, click on it, subscribe to your show, and are actually listening to it. And all those metrics, I'm paying, $3 to $5 per new subscriber, not per download, but like these people are binge listening. These are hundreds of potential downloads. And I've done that I've got one of those ads running every single month for the past like 3 years. And I'm just scooping up audience and it's just automatic real listeners for dollars. And
I
I
love that.
love that. Yeah.
Dang, that's a great tip. And what I love about this, and I remind my people of, is one new listener equates to thousands of downloads, like one loyal listener, because it's not only them that's going to do the listening, but if you're great at what you're delivering, they definitely know people that are just like them, that are your ideal client. And if you have that constant call to action that's like, hey, if you found this valuable, will you just share it with somebody that you know? It translates. And so I don't want to overlook like the power of one new listener and what that can be for your audience.
Yeah. What if you've got a $2,000 offer and they decide to sign up? Awesome. You
Totally.
just paid $150 for an Overcast ad. This is real life. Like this happens to me all the time. People are like, yeah, I found you on Overcast, and they're buying my 5K program or 2,500. Like I'm like, this is awesome. The ROI is
Okay,
really great.
noted. I have all these check boxes that you
I
like have
love
told
it.
me today that I'm like, oh wow, we don't do these things. I need to jump into this too. So you're so awesome. I love the passion for it and the fact that you could bring out so many metrics and data. You know, I'm like a fellow geek around data. And so it's so valuable to hear, to celebrate ourselves. Those of you that have been podcasting and you hear that 125 mark, I hope that feels doable. Even if you're new, you're like 125 people, that's all you have to find. There's 125 people that definitely want to hear what you have to say out there. So I'm so grateful for all of the very tangible stuff that you shared. I would love for you to share with my audience, where can they go to hang out with you on your show and all the other places?
Yeah. So I'm going to give you all some homework. All right. I'm not going to leave Best Damn Coach podcast without giving you some action steps here. This is kind of what I'm known for. So I've got 2 episodes of Podcasting Business School that I think will be really helpful for this specific audience.
Cool.
All right. The first one is episode number 353 of Podcasting Business School. It's called the Podcast Monetization Pyramid. If you're trying to get clients from your podcast, go listen to that. It's a framework. Amanda loves it. All right. She's all about it.
Yay.
And then I want you to listen to episode 445. It's called the Podcasting Success Timeline. I break down the journey that most podcasters are on into 4 phases. You can identify where you're at, why you're there, and the steps you need to take to get to the next phase. All right. So go listen to that. Super helpful. And otherwise, if you're going to hang out with me, podcastingbusiness.school or podcasting business school on Instagram. And and I just want to say one other thing. This show is amazing. The tips that Amanda is delivering, I love podcasts. When I listen to it, I'm like, yeah, she could have charged me for that. You know, like I love that. So you all are in the right place. I just wanted to say that, like,
Oh,
if you're
thank you.
loyally
I'm
listening to
honored.
this, yeah, you're in the right spot.
Oh, I'm honored with all your experience that you share that for us. And that's so awesome. So I so appreciate you. So thanks for everything. And I'm gotta go do our homework now too. So thanks.
That's how we roll.
Appreciate you.